Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are doing chapter 77, right? LXV11. The name of the chapter is various. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. This chapter is called Al Mursalat, and there are various meanings to that, all sort of meaning the same. It's one who is dispatched, one who is sent, the emissary, etc., etc. But as we read the verses, we'll get to the grips of the meaning. And the first reading of this chapter, one gets the impression that it's not so serious a chapter, pretty easy. But when you start making some research, you suddenly find there's more to it than meets the eye. So let's start. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Mursalat Urfan. And it starts off with the Waw Qasmiya, which Allah is taking an oath, and there's the third verse is also Qasmiya. And where the Waw Qasmiya is used, it is very, very emphatic rather than just Qasama, the root Qasama. The Waw Qasmiya is more emphatic. Consider those that are sent forth with goodness. Now, this word Mursalat was also used for other Anbiya, very specifically in chapter 7, verse 133, to Lut alayhi salam. Same word is used. But if we look at 2181, it also used for a very heavy wind, destructive wind. Right? But we'll see the comparisons as we go along. The messengers and the Anbiya Ikram, that was the apostles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, were sent to make a distinction in the world. That Allah's law of guidance is, and the consequence of not following the guidance leads to problems. The divine system, and wherever Allah takes the Waw Qasmiya, He's emphasizing, as I said, the divine system, which oaths to undisputing facts will take place. That there are certain things will definitely take place. Now, it's according to the law of nature, which we spoke about the winds, but it also in reference to the destruction and chastisement and punishment to those who do not follow the law of Allah. The next verse, فَالْآسِفَاتِ أَسْفًا, then those that drive off the chaff, asfan. That means that the life that has no capacity or capability of progress. That's the, you get this in wheat. Those of you know about wheat farming, the chaff of the wheat is the waste. Right? So it has no chance whatsoever of progressing because it gets thrown away. And the third verse, again, وَالنَّاشِرَاتِ نَشْرًا, and those that spread the seed of goodness far and wide. Now, this was the basic responsibility of the Nabi, of the Anbiya, was to spread the good message that they get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And that it must be spread far and wide, and obviously every Anbiya had a specific region to address. فَالْفَارِقَاتِ فَرْقًا, then those that make a distinction. These Anbiya, their job was always to make a distinction from good and evil. It's not only that, the Malaikas, many of the Malaika had the same kind of responsibility to make a distinction amongst the people. And there's the separation here of the positiveness and the destructive element. Uzran, one uzran, to clear, then those that offer the reminder, the reminder that is the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that comes with the Anbiya, and that also makes a distinction. And the uzran wa nuzran, to clear or to warn. Now uzr means a weakness. We even use that word in Urdu. If somebody has got a weakness or suddenly gets sick and limbs don't work, they call it uzr. So it is to clarify that kind of weakness and warn as to what will happen if that weakness continues. Innama tu'aduna lawaqi'un. Most surely what you are threatened with must come to pass. Right? Now, if we go back to the first verse, right, where the explanation was that Allah's laws of guidance and the subsequent, the laws of consequences of action, it must pass. It will happen. It's not something that is going to disappear. Right? And we'll see a verse that's coming now where that it's like the chastisement is put off. Right? And we'll come to that verse just now. فَإِذَا النُّجُومُ تُمِسَّتْ. So when the stars are made to disappear, and I'm going to read the other verses, وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ فُرِجَتْ, and when the heaven is rent asunder, وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ نُسِفَتْ, and when the mountains are carried away as dust. These three verses, on the face of it, and correctly so, refers to the destruction of the universe, the earth, and everything that as we know it. But in the deeper research, we find that it also refers to those people who were in power, right? They were like the mountains, the great power, and when the revolution came, a revolution that is promised in the Quran, to those people who believe that you will become rulers on earth. Allah says so. So when those believers became rulers, those and their enemies who were acting as great mountains turned to be dust. So there's two ways of looking at this. And the stars are the small groups. From earth, the stars look very small. But when the heaven is rent asunder, even the small becomes smaller. And when the mountains are carried away as dust, and these people who had all the power, all the wealth, and they used to rule the earth or the area at that time, they will become dust. And this is also explained in chapter 20, verse 105, and 56, verse 5. Very similar explanation, so we won't go there. وَإِذَا الرُّسُلُ أُقِّتَتْ. Now, verse 11, and when the apostles, when the Rasuls are made to reach their appointed time. That means each Anbiya is given a job to do, and it is within a set period. What this verse is telling us, that they have reached that end of that period and they have done their job. Right? لِأَيِّ يَوْمٍ أُجِّلَتْ. To what day is the doom fixed? So they had a job for a period, and now those people who thought that the punishment was deferred, as they are being told now that the doom, their chastisement, is also fixed, but they don't know about it. Right? لِيَوْمِ الْفَصْلِ. To the day of decision. Right? Now, the end of the day, there's two things here. One, that on the day of judgment, It will be a day of decision making. Allah will make his decision, or we shall make a decision, whatever the case might be. And this word fasal is very important. It appears twice in this verse, also in the surah. It appears in verse 38 also. And just to give you a couple of examples of how the Quran relates to this word. Alif Ram Ra Kitabun Uhkimat Ayatu Summa Fussilat Min Ladunna Hakimun Khabir. That this is the book whose verses are perfectly clear and expounded. Then one who is wise, and it is from one who is wise and well acquainted. So here the Quran is perfect and is expounded, and Allah is explaining what the Quran does. Then in 752, فَصَّلْنَاهُ عَلَى الْإِلْمِ, clearly and wisely expounded. So if we look at all these verses where this word appears, you'll find that it is an explanation that Allah gives us in the Quran of what is going to happen and how the Quran explains everything. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا يَوْمُ الْفَصْلِ, my famous phrase in the Quran is وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ. Allah says, who will explain to you what is this day of distinction, this day of making a decision? Who will explain? But before Allah explains, and this verse, وَيْلٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ, appears 10 times in this chapter. Now when something is emphasized so many times by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are forced to pay attention to it. And what does it mean? Woe on the day to the rejected, those who rejected the law of Allah and thought that, their chastisement has been deferred and nothing will happen to them. Like the verse before. Now, there's a famous surah that starts off with this word, and we'll quickly go through it. I'll just read the first verse in Arabic and then we'll read the English. وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ. Right? This is the slanderer. Woe to every slanderer and defamer. Obviously, it's not on the same subject, but I'm just trying to explain the use. Who amasses wealth and considers it as a provision against all mishaps. That means the money is going to save him. Right? The wealth will save him. Right? He thinks that his wealth will make him abide. Nay, he shall most certainly be hurled into the crushing disaster. The same kind of description is given in the chapter that we are doing. Right, that's the first one. Alam nuhlikal awwaleen. Did we not destroy the former generation? Now Allah is explaining. This is wama adraka ma yawmul fasl. Right? Allah tells us, look into history. Travel in history and see what has happened to those before you who rejected the law of Allah. As Allah says that He will put another person, another group, another nation in your place if you don't follow His rules and regulations. If you reject, you make a joke of it, and you will pay the price. Summa nutbi'uhumul akhirin. Then did we follow them up with later ones. Exactly what I just said. That those people were followed by later ones. Kazalika naf'al bil mujrimeen. Even thus shall we deal with the guilty. So there's no chance of escaping. The mujrim, the guilty one, a mujrim is an accused person in court. And in Surah Yasin, Allah says, وَامْتَازُ الْيَوْمَ أَيُّهَا الْمُجْرِمِينَ. O you guilty ones, O you accused ones, separate from the others. Don't mix with the other guys, don't taint the character of the other people. Separate from them on the day of judgment. And then again, Wailul yawma izil lil mukazzibin. Woe on that day to the rejectors. Right? Alam nakhlakum min ma'in mahin. Now, the tone changes a little bit. Allah spoke about the guilty ones, spoke about the proud ones who act like big mountains that can't be crushed. Now Allah says, did we not create you from contemptible water? Right? فَجَعَلْنَاهُ فِي قَرَارٍ مَكِينٍ. Then we placed it in a secure and resting place. This is the reproductive system, gestation, right? إِلَىٰ قَدَرٍ مَعْلُومٍ, till an appointed time. And we all here, we know that the appointed time in the reproductive system, and just want to surprise you a little bit, is 10 months. Right? 9 solar months, 10 lunar months. And because the Quran emphasizes the lunar months, it's 10 months. Now this is first Allah spoke about the process of revolution. Right? Now Allah talks about the continued process of evolution and creation. فَقَدَّرْنَاهُ فَنِعْمَ الْقَادِرُونَ. So we proportion it. How well are we at proportioning things? Everything is balanced. Everything is according to a law in Allah's creation. Nothing is outside of that law. Nothing, not a thing. Right? And this is not the place, but there are many, many verses in the Quran where Allah talks about proportion, balancing, creating, etc., etc. Then, those of us who have not, and you know, there's a verse, and I couldn't find it last night. There's a verse that says that those who do not follow or do not believe in the law of Allah, they need to examine their iman. I'll find that verse sometime. But and those who don't do it, and Allah says, "Wailul yawma izin lil mukazzibin." That those who do not think that everything is balanced, everything is according to a law. Lan tajidanna li sunnatillahi tabdila, la tabdila li kalimatillah. 13 times similar verses are used in the Quran, that you will not find a change in the law of Allah. No change whatsoever. And then when we talk about other things, suddenly we bring in the change, but that's another subject. Ahba'un wa amwatan. Have we not made the earth to draw together to itself, to make it like a holder? The earth takes care of everything that Allah has placed on it, right? Like a receptacle. Right? So Allah says, there is the safety for man on earth because Allah has created the earth that way. وَجَعَلْنَا فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ شَمِخَاتٍ وَأَسْقَيْنَاكُمْ مَاءً فُرَاتًا, and made therein lofty mountains and given you to drink of sweet water. Before that is, the living and the dead will be on earth. Right? The living and the dead on earth. So that everything will happen on this earth. And there are other verses in the Quran, if we look at 327, 695, 1031, and 3019, where Allah says, the dead, and those that are given life again, the living, those that die, all will be on this earth. So everything is going to happen on this earth. Then, and made therein lofty mountains, and given you to drink of sweet water. It's a natural law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that provisions are made for everybody. And those who do not accept the fact that everything comes from Allah, and Allah says again, woe on that day to the rejectors, to those, wailul yawma yazil lil mukazzibin. In taliqu illa ma kuntum bihi tukazzibun. walk on that which you called a lie. See? Allah says, now, you said this is not going to happen, or when is it going to happen? Prove it to us. Now Allah says, taste the consequences of your actions. Right? Intaliku ila zillin zi sakasin shu'ab. Now walk, neither having the coolness, you see, walk on the covering having 3 branches. Salasin shu'abin. There's 3 things that Allah is pointing out here. That you think it is a comfort for you, but when it turns around, it's actually not so much of a comfort to you. Right? La zalilum wa la yughni min al-lahab. Neither having the coolness of the shade, nor availing against the flames. So, those that have rejected Allah's laws, they will not have. They think that the shade will save them from the heat of the fire. Right? There's no such thing. The second one is innaha tarmi bi shararin qal asr. Surely it sends up sparks like palaces, like huge columns. And the third one is ka'annahu jimalatun sufra, as if they were tawny camels. You know this color, tawny color camels. Now, there's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using this camel to say that this punishment, you think, because you rely so much on camels in your daily life, they are a support for you, there is a means of earning a living, but don't be misled. This that you see, it's a color of your camel, but it is a disaster for you. Okay? Then Allah says again, Wailul yawma izil lil mukazzibin. And this, those who did not know that one day that it will come where we're going to be accountable, and woe on that day to the rejectors. Haza yawma la yantikun. This is the day on which they shall not speak. Here, a law of Allah comes into being that you will not, or us, we will not be talking. Right? Certain parts of our bodies will give evidence against us. Right? How that's going to happen, you know, if you read certain other verses of the Quran and other literature, the hands will speak, the legs will speak where you went, etc., etc. That is all part of Allah's law, and obviously Allah will make that happen. And permission shall not be given to them so that they should offer excuses. وَلَا يُؤْذُنْ لَهُمْ فَيَعْتَذِرُونَ. Right? Allah will not give permission for anybody to make excuses or to apologize. You know, there's a verse in the Quran where Allah says that the rejectors on the day of Qiyamah will take an oath and say, oh, Qassam, we didn't do this thing. Right? So, very similar verses to say that the rejectors will not be given an opportunity to apologize. Again, woe on that day to the rejectors. So all this will happen. And remember, this is all part of this وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا يَوْمُ الْفَصْلِ, the day of distinction. All these things are going to happen, what we can do and what we will not be able to do. هَذَا يَوْمُ الْفَصْلِ. Again, the same word is being used. This day of decision. Right? We have gathered you and those of you, that you also and those before you who were guilty, all will be gathered. And this again, as I said, we refer to verse 14 on that. And this is very important, that the whole concept is accountability. And this is in accordance with the law of Allah. I just want to read something here, which came in verse 33. It is most likely that by the 3 branches of the covering of fire are meant its 3 characteristics stated in the verses that follow, that I've just read. Here it is called zil, shadow, which ordinarily means shadow, but a covering of fire seems to be more suitable to the context. So, those of us who think that we're going to be the protection of a shadow, actually the flame of the fire will be above our heads. So that will be the covering, according to the explanation. The three qualifications are there, gives no shade and does not avail itself or against the flames, and itself sends up sparks like columns. If you go to verse 39, فَإِنْ كَانَ لَكُمْ كَيْدٌ فَكِيدُ وَيْلُ الْيَوْمَ يَزِلِ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ. What will happen to us who have rejected the law of Allah, who did not follow the law of Allah? We will try and strategize against the punishment that is going to be meted out. Right? And then in Arabic, فَإِنْ كَانَ لَكُمْ كَيْدٌ فَكَيْدُونِ. Right? We will make a plan against Allah's plan. And Allah's plan obviously will overshadow our plan. Then section 2, which is more positive. Innal muttaqina fi zilalin wa uyun. Surely those, now here the scene changes. First, Allah spoke about the messengers that were sent, then the rejectors, then the reproductive system, and now Allah talks about those who practice taqwa. Right? And obviously we all know the meaning of taqwa, to be conscious of Allah, conscious of the law of Allah, and one of the translators uses this word, to be aware. And like the translation, to be always aware of the law of Allah. Right? وَفَوَاكِهَا مِمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ. And fruits such as they desire. Right? And I'll read the Arabic. Eat and drink pleasantly because of what you did. So this is the reward, right, for those who practiced taqwa, who practiced Allah consciousness and did the right thing. Surely, thus do we reward the doers of good. Now, here Allah is talking about the good guys. Then Allah says, Inna kazalika najzil muhsinin. Woe on that day to the rejectors, surely thus do we reward the doers of good, and woe on that day to the rejectors. So look at the difference. That Allah is talking about all the good things that's going to happen, and then obviously the rejectors will be aware of the good things. Now, I have two versions of this explanation, which last week I couldn't explain in more detail because I had to rush off. Jannah is there. Punishment in Jahannam is there. But remember, Allah again and again talks about the reward for those who do good in this world. Now imagine going to somebody who has just accepted Islam and is waiting for this reward to happen. So when the Muslims overran certain parts of their empire, the Byzantine Empire, the Iranian Empire, and other wars, they all were entitled to booty from the war, to reward from whatever they had got back from the war. And this is also what Allah is telling them, that the fruits and the eating and the drinking, you will be free to do that because now you are in control. Right? You are ruling. You have overtaken this country. And this is what happened when, obviously it's not part of the Quran, but if you read the history of Umar, when he overran Iran, what he was told there. Kulu wa tamatta'u qalilan annakum mujrimun. Eat and enjoy yourselves for a little. Surely you are guilty. Now, those that Allah has just spoken about the woe on that day to the rejected, Allah is also telling them, all right, you can have a little bit of fun, but you will be also be taken care of. You will also be accountable, right? And again, woe on that day to the rejectors. Then وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ الْقَوْلُ لَا يَرْقَعُونَ. And when it is said to them, when it was said to them, bow down, they did not bow down. Now here, of course, some of us will take that as being the part of Salah, bowing in Salah, and others will also say that it was part of obeying Allah's law, the whole the question of obeisance. Then Allah says again, يَوْمَ يَزِنْ وَيْلُ الْيَوْمَ يَزِنْ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ. And woe on that day to the rejectors. That those who refuse to follow what the majority were doing, they were bowing down, they were obeying the laws of Allah, and you were too proud to do that. Then فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَهُ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Hadith, if you look at the different places where it is used, it means a discourse, it means a narration, it means an explanation, and a statement, all from the Quran. Now, there is many places where Allah says, so which hadith are you going to follow? You have been given the Quran, but you want to follow something else. Which hadith are you going to be following? Right? And this is something that we need to be very aware of.